What it do, ladies and dudes? Vulgar Desperado on the mic, representing the Jabberjaws, here to give you and your crew something to talk about in your living room. So today we're going to give you a quick review of Crisis on Infinite Earths, DC Animated Studios' latest film. And like many other things, the book is better. But before we go any further, do us a solid here. Hit that like, hit that subscribe on our road to 1,000. Appreciate the love. Thank you very much. Now, I don't want to be here too long. Rather have you just go watch the movie for yourself. And I just kind of want to keep this to be a quick video. But for those that don't know, Crisis on Infinite Earths is DC's, at least in the comic, was their attempt at reorganizing and reducing the amount of characters that the DC universe had exploded into. At the time, not unlike our current modern comics and modern entertainment with films, there was a shit ton of multiverses, shit ton of alternate versions of Batman, Superman, and the like. And I know one key thing that they always talked about, at least within the makings of this comics, was you can't have Superman being the last son of Krypton and all these new Kryptonians kept appearing, a la Supergirl and things like that. So the comic was essentially a way to reduce all that, and I hadn't read it, like, obviously back in those days. I don't even know if I was born or old enough to read, but I did read it in more recent years when I decided to start collecting a lot of the old school books, and I did like Crisis on Infinite Earths. I'm not a big fan of the old school style art. I know some people are purists on that, but for me it's kind of like, I'm not a big on the color palettes and that old 70s 80s styles costumes that they usually have. Some are good, some are not, but you know, to each their own. And generally speaking, when it comes to this movie, it's not so far, right? Let me be clear, this is going to be a trilogy, but the book, or rather, excuse me, the movie so far does not follow the book so well, and I don't think it will. If you've watched any of the DC animated movies in the last like 20 some odd years, I could maybe list one or two or three that I think follows the book, the comic that it's adapted off, so well, or, you know, perfectly. I think one example might be Superman, Batman, Apocalypse. I think that is, generally speaking, pretty close to the original Batman, Superman. And I think Public Enemies as well. Those are like the only ones that I can, you know, think of off top. There's probably some other ones, but, you know, just off top. And in that sense, it doesn't necessarily ruin the movies, like from the past ones and this one, in and of itself, that it's, you know, different or takes certain creative liberties, but I think it kind of, the deviation that this movie does slightly fucks up the story. Now, it does remain true, as in, at least within the first movie, the main focus, or one of the main central characters, is the Flash, and you're kind of wallowing around with him as he's disconjointed in different timelines and multiverses and blah blah blah, and it's kind of interesting. I'm not gonna lie and act like it's not interesting to keep you watching the movie. That being said, I do felt like it was a little like disconjointed and it was too heavily focused on the Flash. So the book in and of itself, it has more of a narration style with the Monitor talking, and oh my god, I'm forgetting this other fucking character's name right now, but it's a dude in green. I'll put up his picture and name in the editing. But he basically is kind of, you know, a more central character, where he's kind of narrating about the fact that all these worlds are dying, and he's kind of, you know, stuck at watching this. And while you do get a little taste of that character in this movie, I don't think the main focus or the lens of the story should have been told through the Flash. I think the story has a more powerful feel when you're being told through the Anti-Monitor and that other guy, and kind of some of the other side characters instead of one of the more bigger characters. For instance, Batman has a larger presence in this movie than he does in the book. This is probably one of the few comic book DC comic books where, at least back in the day wise, like where Batman is not so much of an important character. We all know today Batman is DC's bread and butter, so it makes more sense that he's everywhere. But in that book, he's not, and it makes a lot more sense. You're kind of dealing in multiverse stuff. You need some super strong, super powered people like that. And there are just those deviations that I do think takes away from what the main focus was, and it was this reducing of these characters and the focusing on this broader multiverse, and this idea that it's kind of become uncontrollable and ridiculous even. And I think, considering that we live in a time where we are just over inundated with multiverse bullshit, that this would be the perfect time to faithfully tell that story. Again, certain adaptations and changings don't make sense, but it distracts, right? Like, a main focus of this movie was Amazo. Amazo's not in the fucking book, as long as I can remember. I'm pretty sure he's not, and I have it next to me, and I'm flipping through it, and I don't see Amazo, but they have this giant Amazo storyline that I don't think was necessary to the story. It kind of takes away from the whole issues of the multiverse, and I think in a very meta sense, this would have been the perfect movie to tell that story. Now, that being said, you got 2 other movies coming, and you can still do that, but I think because you started this movie off focusing on the Flash and kind of keeping the villain somewhat nebulous and not being as direct as you can. And don't get me wrong, the book in and of itself doesn't start off saying, hey, this is the bad guy and this is what we're doing, and here we, like, it has a very mysterious flow to it. But I think in that mysterious flow, you kind of have like a better guidance and direction, where this shit, if you didn't know better, you would just thought it was a Flash movie. It was just very, very, very focused on the Flash, and nothing wrong with that. But spoiler, he dies, and so does another central character, Supergirl. They kind of like are sidelined in this first movie, and this whole elimination of the multiverse thing, it gets kind of lost in the translation, if you will, when you're more focusing on the Flash, his heroics, his marriage, his life. You kind of lose that. And while it's, gripping and interesting to watch, I do think that the main, or at least the cool selling point, I mean, the fucking title is Crisis on Infinite Earths. That is a sick title. But when you kind of focus more on like one superhero above all, and you don't relay some of the other realities of this book, again, as of the first movie, it diminishes that. And that to me makes the movie somewhat of a pass. I do think that, there is a chance the next 2 movies can be worth it altogether, but I mean, this isn't a movie you need to go rush to see. I don't think it's the worst thing, like a lot of things. However, I do think the animation style is absolute gutter trash. One thing that really kind of bothers me about this is there are these slow moments of animation where you're just like, okay, that was a little weird. And my other thing that kind of bothers me is that everyone just looks the fucking same. Like, the art style is way too stock and standard. Nobody knows how to, kind of have like, I don't know, like simple things that they can do. Superman in the actual book has those Gregory Richards hairs, and the older Superman here has a couple crow's feet. Like, that's dumb, okay? They need to work on this animation style, and I heard somebody talk about it too, like, hey, this is kind of the last DC animated universe that's filmed for this universe, and then they're gonna kind of go into a new direction, so there's a chance that the animation style may change in the future. I would beg to differ, because this is a cheap and easy style, and we all know studios love money more than anything. So personally, that kind of is a big knockoff for me. I don't like the cheap style. Overall, I think, if you ain't got shit else to do, you'll enjoy it. The book is better, even if the book isn't one of my favorite DC, comic books. It's still pretty cool, and it's a good like starting point to, well, not somewhat the modern world, but it does lay a foundation for a lot of things that you do kind of know now and where things ended up. So it is kind of interesting to get that DC hero history, and it is interesting to kind of watch it if you don't really feel like reading it. The one thing about these older books is they definitely are mouthfuls. There's a lot of fucking talking, and this movie has a lot less of it. So you're not going to get the full best story from this movie so far, but it might pique your interest to go read the book, and I think that's the best thing that can happen here. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you like it? Would you think it was one of DC's better animated films? Did you like the art? Did you think that it was worth your time? Or do you think that maybe you'll just wait for the other two movies and watch them all together? But you know what it is. Jabberjaw's in the booth. Vulgar Desperado won that mic. Do me a solid, hit that like and subscribe on your way out. Catch you on the next one. Deuces.